Hello everyone, welcome to another video here at Bricks and Sticks. I hope everyone had a good Tuesday, and tonight I actually pretty much wanted to do a work on building this Lego Dungeons and Dragons set, um, while also talking about the Florida Panthers Home Opener and banner raising. So yeah, there's plenty to talk about. Ended up being a very eventful Tuesday. So as mentioned, the Panthers had their home opener and game number 1 of the 82 game season, and they also raised the banner, and it was a really fun, good game that really Florida got up for, as expected, as you know, with their budding rivalry with Boston. I mean, you know, when it comes to Boston, when you think of rivalry, you probably think Toronto and Boston, but you'd have to think Florida's up there now since they met in the playoffs for 2 years in a row. And yeah, and a lot of animosity carried over to tonight's game. Although, to be honest, I expected more. Although there was a fight and several scrums, but you know, we'll get to that. So to start off with, probably a good place to start is to talk about Florida's roster, as they did have some turnover that took place. So they did lose a lot of players over the offseason, which is to be expected from every team that pretty much wins the cup. They get rummaged by other teams. So the top line was intact. It's Verhage, Barkov, and Reinhardt. That doesn't change. And then Rodriguez, Bennett, and Kachuk, which was pretty much a carryover from the playoffs, which they did play. You know, they did regularly play last year as well together, but they really stuck together in the playoffs. Which way are they looking at this here? This way. Yeah, so that was a carryover of sorts. And then the third line, so out is Vladimir Tarasenko, who got a pretty good deal in Detroit. And he's replaced by Maki Samoskevich, who actually started the season last year with Florida, so he's not completely new, but he's 1 year older, and he did look pretty good and very comfortable in the third line. Although I think the in-game festivities, the penalties and scrums and PKing kind of took away from his minutes, since he doesn't really play special teams. And then the fourth line, where the most players got replaced and switched out. Lomberg went back to Calgary. Okposo retired. Lawrence is in Toronto now, and Stenlund is in Utah. And then on the defense, Forsling and Ekblad stays the same. In the second pair, we have Mikkola and Kulikov now, who has moved up from the third pair to the second pair, and Balinskis and Adam Boquist getting the third D pairing duties. Balinskis is also not new. He played several games for Florida last year, but numbers game, and he didn't finish the season with Florida, although he was there for the playoff run. And Boquist, who was bought out from Columbus. He's still young, oddly enough, but he's had a tough start to his career with injuries, concussions, and what have you. Um, and I glossed over on the fourth line for Florida is now Gadrovich, Jesper Boquist, the brother of Adam Boquist, and AJ Greer. And I thought they had a really strong game. Nosek, who's was penciled in to be the fourth line center, got injured in preseason, and he's still weeks away from, according to Bill Zito. Yeah. So, and then on goaltending, you know it's Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight. Did I make a mistake? Anyway, I think there might have been an error on my build here. But yeah, okay. So anyway, and yeah, pretty much right off the bat, Florida, and I feel like the matchup was good for both teams. As far as Florida's concerned, everyone talks about the possibility of having a cup hangover, and it was nice that Florida faced a team that they knew they had to wake up for, because if you don't get up against Boston, they'll just absolutely run through you. That's not a team that you just say, okay, we'll get it next time, because if you don't get up for Boston, that you could get hurt. And so right from the start, Florida had the jump, and Boston like a little flat-footed, and Florida carried the play. Like halfway through the first, the shots were like 9-1. Of note here to discuss is Boston started the game with Korpisalo and not Jeremy Swayman, and I would imagine that the game probably would look markedly different if Swayman started the game, depending on how he played, of course. I don't think Boston's built to be able to chase a team from behind. I think they're the type of team that gets the lead and they just grind you out or force you into mistakes as you try to come back. And Florida is a really tough team to play catch up against, just because they play really good defensively. I gotta say, which I'll probably better to talk about it towards the end. But so anyway, on the first period, it's quite fitting that the first goal scored for this season is Sam Bennett. And as many know, Sam Bennett was, and probably is, public enemy number one in Boston. So for him to get the first goal of the season and for it to come against Boston is just, it's just actually like, you can't write it any better. And then not soon after that, Lucerinen scored from Reinhardt and Lundell. And you could kind of see that both of those goals, Korpisalo was losing the puck a lot. He just seemed to lose track of where the puck is, and he looked super shaky and just really bad overall. Just not gonna mince words about it. Although his team in front of him probably didn't do him any favors. They were getting shelled and weren't really playing adequate defense. Unfortunately for them. And then after that, Florida gets a power play. And another thing to mention here is on the second power play, or in the first power play, they were trying to, well, Matthew Tkachuk looked like he baited a Bruin into a fight. And yeah, you could really tell that Boston still has a lot of animosity towards Tkachuk. And can't really blame him for that. Tkachuk and Bennett, really. And Bennett jumped into Tkachuk's defense, as they always do for each other. Oh, okay. I see. And yeah, and the Florida power play really struggled tonight, which kind of, I don't know, it started slow last season too, and it picked it up. It finished 8th overall. And then, of course, it was a big talking point during the Stanley Cup final, since the power play was really bad. Edmonton Oilers scored more shorthanded goals than the Panthers did power play goals, and it almost cost Florida the series. All right, sorry about that pause there. I ended up having to look for a piece here for a second, and I finally found it. So anyway, yeah, on the Florida power play, they had a slow start last year, and so they were trying Adam Bokas on the point, which he unfortunately took a puck to the face, and on the second power play, which is really unfortunate. And I think it really threw their power play into a big time whack, because they were practicing with that 5-man unit from last year, just replaced Montour with Boquist, and they were working on it all preseason, and then for him to just get hurt, and then Ekblad was tasked of taking over the top unit, and I really like Ekblad as a player. I've watched him grow up and be a champion. It's just, I think he lacks the foot speed to be a good quarterback on the power play. He's more so of a trigger man, if that. So yeah, it's power play ended up going 0 for 6, which is unfortunate, but it didn't hurt him this time. So anyway, on their second power play, they end up giving up a shorthanded goal to Boston on a clearing attempt. Not even a clearing attempt, just a breakout pass, and it hits Barkov, and it takes a funny bounce, and Boston beats Bobrovsky clean over the right shoulder. And speaking of Bob, I don't think he was particularly strong tonight. Definitely not playoff Bob. And he's been known to start seasons kind of slow. But again, it's game one. You can't really judge game one all that much. Um, and then Florida does respond late in late in the late in the first to take a 3-1 lead, and I'm trying to remember the goal scorer. There were I believe it was Bennett again. No, it wasn't Bennett again. I think Bennett scored the fourth goal. Was it Gadjevich? I think Gadjevich scored the third goal, which beautiful pass from Jesper Boquist. That line looks really strong. Really like Greer's game tonight. And then a minute later to finish the first, Boston's favorite hockey player, Sam Bennett, scores his second of the game to carry a 4-1 lead into the first intermission. So yeah, Florida looking really strong, and I was actually half joking that Swayman was going to start the second period and on, but I understand Boston held him out. He's hasn't had any preseason action or missed training camp, so it's not worth risking your number one goalie over that. Of things of note in the first period, I thought Carter Verhaeghe had a lot of strong chances to score, and I was actually laughing. I'm like making the joke that it looks like he can't score. Is it because it's a contract year for him and he's not living up to the pressure of trying to earn that Sam Reinhart type contract? And there's a funny thing about that we get to find out at the end of the game. But during the game, I was joking with other Florida fans that Carter Verhaeghe looks kind of terrible and he needs to pick it up because it's a contract year. Obviously, I was joking. He created a lot of chances and he could have easily had like 2 goals in the first period. He even hit a post also. So yeah, Verhaeghe had a strong game. Oh, I'm sorry. The third goal was Sam Reinhart. How could I forget that? Gadjevich didn't score to the second. The third goal was a Sam Reinhart shorthanded goal, and it was an absolute beauty. If you need to catch the replay of it if you haven't seen it. He takes a pass from Barkov to exit the zone, and he goes one-on-one strong against Charlie McAvoy down the left wing. And when he gets right around the circles, he slides the puck under McAvoy's stick, and then he puts his stick over McAvoy, so ends up being this way. And somehow he takes a snipe roof job all in one motion, and it was a ridiculous play. And yeah, so they respond with a shorthanded goal of their own. Anyway, so they start the second period with a 4-1 lead, and more of the same. You get scrums here and there, which an absolute comedy thing is Max Jones during one of the scrums was getting into it with Evan Rodriguez, and he tries to slash Rodriguez. He ends up slashing the linesman instead, and he gets a penalty for it. So yeah, in the second period, Boston was looking like they were unraveling a little bit, which is you hate to see. I was laughing so hard when he slashed the linesman. It wasn't even the ref. He slashed the linesman. And he's actually really lucky he didn't get tossed through the game, and I guess they must have felt it wasn't intentional. And yeah, he gave him a pretty good whack, but again, Florida doesn't take advantage because their power play tonight just absolutely stunk. Um, and then uh, Boston actually scores a goal to make it. Well, first Florida gets another one, gets another goal from Gadjevich. That's their fifth goal is from Gadjevich, and it was a wild sequence because Barkov had a mini breakaway and he beats Corpusalo, but he misses the net on his patented backhand move. And then he gets another chance in the high slot and he misses the net. And then play rolls on for another 30 seconds or so, and during a dump in, Samuskevich actually runs into the lineman, which causes a turnover. The puck doesn't get in deep. He's not able to chase. And Boston throws a harmless shot at Bob, and he can't handle the puck pops in and out of his glove and lands square flat for McAvoy, and he just slams it home. And again, I didn't particularly think that Bob had a strong game. He honestly the score of the game should have been. I want to say the score of the game honestly should have been 6-2. Two of the goals allowed by Bob tonight was pretty bad, which that one, the McAvoy goal, was a pretty bad one. And you get a few more scrums here and there, and then Evan snipes one in towards the end of the second period as Bennett runs over Corpusalo and another fight breaks out. And on to the third, you can kind of tell Florida kind of, 6-2 lead, first game of the season. They're not going to go empty the tank, as they should not. There's no point to do that. And they kind of allow Boston back into the game towards the end of the game. They get a third goal with a cycle from behind the Panther net, and Bob didn't have a chance on this one. And then the fourth goal was kind of fluky, kind of Pasternak tries to center the pass, it hits a skate and beats Bob 5-hole, which I guess you could say it was Bob wasn't expecting it, but he was already sliding way out of position on that one. So the score ends up being 6-4. Florida didn't look like they were threatened at all, and they carried the play the whole game, pretty much, and Boston was chasing the whole time, and as I mentioned, Boston's not really the type of team that's gonna be able to come back from too many big leads. They're not really built like that. Last season they had Pasternak score 100+ points, and this their second leading scorer Marchand was like 40 away. So it's a really huge gap offensively for them, and they're counting on Elias Lindholm to kind of be that other producer, and Lindholm hasn't really had a good season offensively since Tkachuk, Gaudreau, and Tkachuk and Gaudreau left. Johnny Gaudreau left Calgary. Which, speaking of Johnny Gaudreau, I'd be remiss if I didn't send my condolences to the Gaudreau family. That was a really tough thing that happened over the summer, and as someone who's lost a family member, my dad, almost a year ago now, it's a really hard thing to get over, and I can't imagine. They say parents are never supposed to bury their children, and I can't imagine what his father, family, wife, kids are going through. It's a really really tough thing, and never drink and drive, never. Um, yeah, so game ends 6-4, and Florida had a strong game for the first two periods, and the third one they kind of let off the gas a little bit, and then on Verhage, funny enough. So as I was saying, that I was joking the whole game about it being a contract year for him. We find out during the post game scrums and interviews that Verhage has actually extended with Florida for 8 years at a $7 million cap hit, which is an absolute bargain. That's a ridiculous deal. That's right up there with the Forsling deal. Verhage is so important to the team. He's Mr. Clutch, Mr. Game 7. They probably don't win Game 7 against Edmonton in the final. He was responsible for both goals, pretty much. Scoring one and being the primary assist on the Reinhardt one. And yeah, it was a great piece of news. A lot of things happened today. Home opener, banner raising, and then you find out that your top line winger is going to be playing with Florida for the next 8 years, which is fantastic to hear. I do hope that Sam Bennett is coming soon in terms of extension. Paul Maurice always calls him a big-time identity player, physical, mean guy to play against, and also another very important player on this team. I hope they find a way to make it work. Also, again, I mentioned the fourth line looked really strong tonight. Shout out to Lundell and Lucerinen. They're both a year older, and they look like they're both a year better also, which is great because I think last year Samoskevich had a hard time staying in the lineup just because he was playing with two other younger guys. But at this point, Lundell and Lucerinen, cup experience, tons of playoff games between them. They're going to be able to carry that line, and that third line looks absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of people talk about Florida having a ridiculous top six. It's really a top nine. Sometimes the top six players for, whatever teams are playing, they might stalemate each other, go up against each other, but it's the third line that really has set Florida apart pretty much every playoff run. 2 years ago, it was Lucerinen, Lundell, Reinhardt. And the team struggled when Lucerinen went down because they had no one to replace him with. Last year, it was Lucerinen, Lundell, Tarasenko, and they were really solid. And it's hard to match up 9 deep against Florida just because they have, Lundell, such a great player. He's turning into such a great player, Baby Barkov. And then the fourth line looks a little more offensively capable, but they still have the physicality that people might have lost. But they look really solid tonight, so I was really happy about that. The defense looked, it's hard to judge again. Although Balinskis is familiar with the team and the way Paul Maurice runs their defensemen and the way they're meant to play. Adam Bokas got hurt, so didn't get to really see what he's able to do outside of he tried to do a spinorama his first shift into the game, and it went nowhere. I know he's known for the offensive prowess, so to speak, but I don't know how happy Paul Maurice was with that spinorama. But I mean, it didn't hurt the team, but it also didn't get the team anywhere. And then he ended up getting hurt, which is unfortunate. And there were, when they asked Paul Maurice after the game, he said, they're waiting to evaluate him. They're gonna run tests on him tomorrow to see if anything's broken, and they'll go from there. And I expect Nate Schmidt to step in, the other defenseman Florida picked up. The only unfortunate thing with Nate Schmidt coming into the lineup for Adam is they are only going to have one right-handed defenseman in the lineup, and that's going to be our Nekla. So they're going to be running lefties for the bottom four, well, not bottom four, but pairs 2 and 3 on defense, which, I don't know, the way Florida plays doesn't really matter. Last season, in the cup final, who closed out the lineup was Forsling. Forsling and Mikola closed out the game, and they're both left-handed, so in the grand scheme of things, it probably doesn't matter that much. And yeah, so really good game overall. Not much to complain about.